Hello everybody, welcome back to our virtual classroom and another lesson in our trades training video series. I'm Joe Carswell, and this session is going to cover the basic techniques of taping. We went over the materials and the tools we're going to use to tape. Now we're going to put that to use, and I've got some basic blue painter's tape, and I've got a 5-in-1 tool. This is what I'm going to use to get through this. A couple other items that I'm going to use are going to be a rag and a brush for cleaning, and then I've got a typical angled brush that I would be using possibly once I've taped to do some work, and I'll demonstrate hopefully the usefulness and the effectiveness and the purpose of taping, and we'll go through all that. So this board is set at an angle for the cameras to get to capture what's going on. Most of your work is going to be done on vertical surfaces. The later part of this video, you'll see this wall in a vertical position. You'll be looking over my shoulder. We even have a demo wall in our classroom here that later on we're going to do this entire process, and we're going to include this taping and masking step in our process of finishing out this wall. So on my board here, I've got some horizontal trim, and I also have some vertical trim. This is kind of mimicking a job site or a typical situation in a building or a structure. You might have horizontal parts. This could be a baseboard, might be a chair rail, could even be crown molding that would be higher between the ceiling and the vertical wall. My vertical pieces here are going to be kind of working towards a casing or any kind of vertical framing or trim around a door frame or a window. And there will be places where these two will come together. So we'll have to deal with corners that are created where trim comes together. Bottom line is this is basically a mock-up, and what I have is my wallboard or drywall are these what looks like inset panels on this demo board, and my more narrow pieces are primed trim. So this is a great situation to demonstrate where you would need to mask. That's where I get into my 3 reasons why we're going to mask. Number 1 is we want to create a shield between the area that we're painting and the area that we don't want paint on. We want to coat, in this case, I want to coat my wall panels, which is my drywall surface, and I want to avoid painting any of my trim. That's my goal here. So the first reason we're going to do that is we want a sealed, complete shield from a brush that's going to come in later, and it's going to cut in on this drywall edge up against this trim. What that tape is going to do is going to seal that edge, and it's going to create a nice clean edge where my paint comes up. It will not allow that paint underneath of the tape, and it will keep my trim from getting the wall paint on the trim. That's the first reason you're going to do it. The second reason you're going to do it is just a barrier between what you're painting and the trim. A lot of painters like to cut their own lines, and the reason for this is a lot of your real world build is not perfect. So the painter wants to decide every inch of the way how they're going to cut that line in, say with a brush or possibly a roller or another kind of tool. They don't want to rely on the tape edge to make that line. So in that case, you would back that tape off a little bit, and it's going to be a barrier, and if you happen to slip or make a mistake, you're not going to have a whole lot of paint transfer onto the trim, which you're trying to avoid. The third reason that you're going to tape is because you want to spray something. And we're not going through spraying today, but I will tell you, when you start spraying, you have to have everything masked off and everything sealed off, because paint is traveling through the air at high velocity, and there's no way to protect the surface that you don't want paint except for to totally seal it off, and that's what our tape's going to do in that case. In all of those cases, the actual application of the tape to the surface happens pretty much the same. So I can show you how to tape, and you could apply it in all 3 of those situations. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, tape doesn't stick to dirt, or actually dirt sticks great to tape, but then it's going to prevent it from sticking to what you really want it to adhere to. So we need to clean all the surfaces before we start applying tape. You can do that with a couple of different methods. We could use a rag, or we could use a brush. And don't use your good brushes to do this. This would be a brush that was spent, or a cheaper version like this chip brush. All of your surfaces that have a top edge are definitely going to collect dust, especially if they have any age to them or if you've been sanding anything. Drywall dust is something that is definitely going to get in the way of the paint sticking. So we're going to clean all these areas of any dust. And you can do this, as I mentioned, with a rag or with your brush. And you'll even see, as you do it on a rag, what's coming off of there. And that is going to mean, if we get that off, we're going to get much better adhesion for our tape. I'm going to clean up a little more than I'm going to tape for you here. But you get the idea. We're going to clean it all up. Now we're ready to go. It's time for the tape now. And we're going to need our tape and our blade. To start with, let's go over just a simple process of how we're going to hand press and how we're going to blade press this tape. I'm going to put it on I'm just going to put a piece of tape on my trim, on the front of my trim. This is not the goal of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to show you this simple process of applying tape. So I've got my tape on here. This is an 1.5 inch blue tape, and I'm going to hand press it. By hand pressing it, it is finger pressure on that tape, and that is going to adhere. If I want that tape to adhere better, I'm going to take a flat blade like this 5-in-1, and I'm going to run it over that tape. What that's doing is adding more pressure, and it's taking all of these edges on this tape, and it's really forcing them down flat. That's going to give me a better seal. So when you're talking about taping, keep in mind that if you hand press, you're going to get a seal. If you blade press, you're going to get a better seal. And a better seal is always preferable, so blade pressing is always preferable. So one other thing to mention is the material or surface that you're sticking the tape to. Pick the right tape. I'll show you a demonstration of what happens if I take this same blue painter's tape and I stick it to my drywall. So I'm going to adhere this tape, finger or hand press it to the drywall, and now I'm going to blade press it. So two surfaces that probably on camera look very similar. This is raw drywall. This raw drywall is actually a paper-faced product. So look what happens when I peel this tape up off of the drywall. So my adhesive is actually pulling up the paper on the drywall. This is a good example of a poor choice of tape for this particular surface. If I pull this tape up off of my trim here, my primed trim, you'll see that it neither leaves any residue and it does not pull up any of the primer. So I would say that for the primed trim that I'm trying to mask, my blue painter's tape is a great choice for that. And this tape has I think it's a 21-day release, clean release. That gives me my 3 weeks that I can have it installed, do my work, and when I take it off, it's going to come off cleanly. So I just wanted to do a quick demo of that. I think that demonstrates it pretty well. Let's get on to taping our trim. So what I'm going to do is, these pieces here are not, this is not a regular situation where you would have a floating piece of trim on a surface, but what this allows me to do is to demonstrate this process very basically. I've got a change of materials, and you'll get the idea by the time I'm done. So this process requires you to be able to work with a sticky material like tape, so you have to be very careful. You don't want it folding or twisting up against itself, or it's going to ruin the tape. And the longer runs you can work in, the better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this tape out, and I want to line it up with my edge. What I'm trying to do is to hit as close to that corner as I can get it. And I want it only on my trim piece. And I want to put a little bit of tension on it so that I don't have any wrinkles in it. I'm going to start from one end here. I'm going to hand press it in place. So what I've got there, and since I'm going to do this whole piece, I'll actually turn this corner while I'm doing it. And the goal here is to use this tape as a shield. If we keep in mind the job that we're setting up for, I want to paint this wall surface here, but I don't want paint on this piece of trim. So this acts as a barrier for that. Next up, I want to seal it to my piece by blade pressing it, and that's going to make it stick as tightly as possible. What I don't want to do is to roll this tape over and stick it down on the face of the surface. What this tape is actually doing is, this is an 1.5 inch tape, that's a 3/4 inch piece of trim. So what I'm getting is some extra protection for that piece by leaving this standing out. It also makes it very easy when we're all done to peel this off. I can grab any free edge of this tape and then pull it off, and then we can move on. We've got a clean surface. So there you see, and here's the thing, tape sticks to tape. So here on this edge over here, I've wrapped this around here, I'm good, and I can leave that sticking out. Over here, I'm short. So what I can do is just take a short piece of tape and go ahead and place that in here. And then my tape sticks to my tape, so I have created that same seal that I wanted. The thing is, your tape doesn't have to be beautiful, it has to work, it has to be effective. So keep in mind that you can run it as long as you need to, stop there, then you can continue. A lot of surfaces on a job site are going to be long and continuous, a lot of your lines, so you can bring it out as far as you need to and then continue it. Let's go ahead and mask another edge. So I've got this edge right here, which could be a casing, something like that. It's a fairly large edge, and it will take the tape just like the other did. And I can start here and work my way around. I'm going to hand press it in place. And I can even, if I get this just right, I can wrap this around the corner and continue it along here. And we can continue it all the way down, wrap it back up. I'm going to, at some point, there's a reasonable place to stop your tape. And then you can reset yourself, get in a better position. We're going to blade press all of this as we go. We want to make sure we get a good seal. Like I said, it's not about being pretty, it's about being effective and sealing up. So think about it as if you are going to make it waterproof. Paint is generally water-based, and if we're using a water-based product, we don't want it creeping under the tape or going past the tape. We're trying to protect this particular trim. I've been doing this so far in long runs. Let me show you how to accomplish the same thing with shorter pieces of tape. It might be easier for you if you're starting out. Handling this tape in longer sections can be frustrating. So let's do this in shorter pieces. This section here, I'm going to kind of measure out with my tape, and I'm going to tear off a piece that will fit in there. So now I can work this in. I'm going to start from my corner here, and I'm going to place that tape in. I'm putting tension on the tape. I'm kind of stretching it out so that I don't end up with any wrinkles in the tape. And I'm going to hand press it in place first. There's my tape. It's standing out. I don't need it to curl over the edge. Now I can blade press it in place. There we go. So that's ready to go. Now if I want to wrap around the corner here, let's just take another piece. I have another run, and I'm going to make this turn with this tape here. So it makes a corner. I'm going to force it into my corner, and with tension on it, I'll hold it in place, and I'll kind of work it along as I go. So that is the way. And the thing is, if you don't get it right the first time, this tape, you can peel off a little section, and you want it placed just right. So don't worry about the whole thing at once. You can kind of work from here all the way around. And when you like what it looks like, you can stick your tape to your tape, and then we can blade press this piece in, and we have accomplished the same thing with shorter runs of tape. Now let's go ahead and stand this board up in a vertical way that would be more normal for you to see. I'll give you a view of what it looks like over my shoulder, and we'll do the same process. So I've got my board in a vertical position. This is much more real world situation here. And just to recap, I'm painting this surface, and I want to protect this surface, this piece of trim right here. So we're working in this section right in here. So my tape is going to go on and it's going to adhere to this surface here. I'm going to get it as close to that corner inside edge as I can get without rolling it over onto my wall surface. So let's go ahead and do that. So I need a piece of tape that's going to work for the job. I've got a general length that'll work great. So we need to start this tape in here on this inside corner. So I want to get it just where I need it, and we'll get a good start as tight up against that inside drywall edge as I can get without rolling it over. We'll go ahead and give it a press with our finger. Now we can pull in our 5-in-1 blade and then blade press it in place. So as we get towards our corner here, we have the end of this vertical run happens right down here. I'm going to hold my knife there. I want a good tight corner there. And you have two options. We can tear this tape off and start with a new piece, or I can go ahead and wrap this tape on my flat surface here that is my next run. So I'm going to go ahead and tear this off. Now my corner is nice and clean with my tape edge. We need to overlap this with another piece running in this direction. So I'll go ahead and pull my next piece of tape out. I want a little bit of an overlap here. So I'll line that up with my other piece, and it's going to start to turn the corner. You can use your blade in here to kind of give you a nice tight start on that. And then we're going to hand press this edge down, making sure that our tape line is exactly where we want it to be. And when we get done with that, we can then finish it off with a blade pressing it down. Make sure that this joint right here is nice and touching and tight and sealed. My next piece will overlap what I just did, and I'm going to do this in one long pull. I get a decent overlap, and I'm going to hand press that in place, correcting it if I need to. Nice and tight to my corner. Make sure that tape overlaps the other piece. And we're going to run it all the way to the corner here. Right to there. And I can continue up. I'll go ahead and tear that. I'm not going to run this vertical piece yet. We can go ahead and blade press this in place. I've got a spot right here with a wrinkle, so I'm going to take that out. Tight to my corner, and now I can run my vertical. So as I'm holding it with my knife here, I'm going to set my tape right where I want it, and I can go ahead and finger press it in place, and then blade press it when I'm done. And all of this stands out, we're done. So those are the basics about how to lay tape onto surfaces. Keep in mind, if you were doing this on a job site, chances are you're going to be trying to protect each one of these panels. So you would be repeating this process even on the underside, all the way around for every single panel. Then you would come in and paint it. And also keep in mind that this process can be frustrating. It's working with tape. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And the benefit later is going to be that now you have so much of an easier job when it comes to having to hand paint these specific areas. You're protecting all of the stuff that you don't need to paint on, and all of the cleanup and follow-up afterwards becomes much easier. So I'm going to get back to work here. I'll see you in the next skills exercise. This video is a production of Trade Skills U, all rights reserved. If you provide instruction in the construction trades and have a need for videos like these, please contact us at tradeskillsu.com.